quarter of 2019, Bernie Sanders outraised every other Democratic contender. He raised $34.5 million in 1 quarter. That's pretty incredible, right? Except all the corporate press has either ignored this story, or they've decided to bury the lead, or they've decided to insult Bernie Sanders. And a good example of that is actually a conversation that went down on Morning Joe. There was a pundit on by the name of Jason Johnson. He's actually on MSNBC quite a bit, on Joy Reid's show quite a bit. And here's what he has to say in the context of a story regarding Bernie Sanders outraising all the other contenders with small dollar donors, by the way. Average donation is $18. Take a look.
The idea there was going to be a progressive battle between Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, it was never something that had much resonance with me, because that presumes that Bernie Sanders supporters are supporting him primarily for policy purposes, and that's not really what's going on. A lot of his core base support like him because they see him as sort of a political and democratic savior type character. So he was always going to end up winning out any sort of policy argument, because in the end of the day, people they like Bernie, and they're Bernie or bust kind of people.
MSNBC and pundits like Jason Johnson always fascinate me because they never have to cite any evidence when they make dumb arguments like that. Where is the evidence that indicates that Bernie Sanders supporters don't like him based on his policies? So what do they like him for? His haircut? The way he dresses? What is it that you think that people like about him other than his policies? His policies, that is the meat behind Bernie's campaign. That is what people love about him. The fact that he actually has the audacity to hope for a better country, to hope for a system that doesn't leave Americans to die because they don't have adequate coverage with their privatized health insurance.
So he said near the end there, he was always going to win out because his supporters view him as some sort of savior. So that part has 2 parts that are amazing. I want to start with the savior part. Okay, Jason, then why? Why do they view him as a savior? Is it because of his clothing? I mean, what is it, a random fact? Or could it be that they think he's the only honest politician because he doesn't take corporate PAC money, he doesn't take lobbyist money, and he hasn't changed his position in 40 years? Oh, right, the positions. Well, do they agree with the positions or don't they? If you had a candidate who hasn't changed their position in 40 years, but he was for having more fossil fuel money in politics and not fighting climate change very aggressively, like Hickenlooper. He drank fracking fluid and he still loves fracking, right? Mm-hmm. So are people going nuts over Hickenlooper? Progressives going nuts over Hickenlooper, going, oh my God, yes, he is so consistent on being pro fossil fuels, right? No, nobody's interested in that. Mm-hmm. Bernie Sanders has been for single payer for 40 years. Other people have been for private insurance for 40 years, but we're not excited about them. Why do we, if you think that people think that Bernie Sanders is a savior, did it not occur to you as a journalist to ask, gee, I wonder why, right? And the answer is so obvious, because of the policy and because of how honest he is. But instead of giving that as a credit to him on a day that he breaks a record on fundraising from so many different people, you use it as a way to dismiss him. Mm-hmm. Now, let me get to the second part, because there's this hilarious video surfaced by
David Dole.
David Dole, the Rational National. You should check out his show on YouTube, of the same pundit about a year ago. Now, if you notice in that clip today, he said he was always going to win out because a lot of people think he's a savior. Well, let's go back a year and see what Jason Johnson thought back then.
If you were to create the worst possible 3-week period for his presidential campaign, it would be the launch of the person you share the most ideological space with, Elizabeth Warren, and the fact you've had to defend yourself against the perception that your supporters are very anti-woman.
He's done. And I was
really. Yeah, you think he's done?
I think
wow.
He's done. I was literally having this discussion with a good contact of mine who's on the campaign. I was like, I see Bernie Sanders launching his campaign, and by August realizing he won't be in the top 5 in Iowa and dropping out. I don't think he'll get that far.
I have to make one quick point. Notice he gets invited on. He was so devastatingly wrong. The whole point of bringing analysts and pundits on is because they're the experts who can really give you the behind the scenes look, what's really going on. They can break down politics for you. I mean, that was an inaccurate take, to say the least. I'm being gentle here, right? But he gets invited on. I don't remember the last time we got invited back on CNN, Cenk. or any cable news network, but just put that out there.
Well, look, let me just follow up real quick on that. So Chuck Todd, that's the same Chuck Todd that last week was talking about, it turns out some Republicans were lying to us. But he said, it's okay, now we got to figure it out, okay? Turns out some politicians aren't being honest. But previous generation got duped into the Iraq war, et cetera, but now we got it straight. And but we pointed out, wait, all those people who got duped are still on air, and they were rewarded, not punished for being wrong. And then right now, MSNBC does the same exact thing. So Jason Johnson tells Chuck Todd, Bernie Sanders, he won't even come into the top 5 in Iowa, wiped out by August.
He's done.
And the same MSNBC has him on now, we always knew he was gonna win among the progressives. I mean, they view him as a savior. Everybody always knew that. It's unbelievable stunning. By the way, on the same time period a year ago, when he was on with Chuck Todd, and he was announcing his candidacy, and they all declared him dead on arrival. I read to you all those quotes from Washington Post and other outlets, and I said they're 100% wrong. He will be incredibly strong. They said nobody will show up to his rallies anymore. I laughed and laughed and laughed, and I said no, he's going to have bigger rallies than anyone else. I guarantee it. Who was right and who was wrong? And then who's on TV and the mainstream media and who isn't? People who are right are not invited on mainstream media. You get invited on to be wrong. It's not an accident. It's not a bug, it's the feature.
100%. Now, what's even more depressing about the corporate press and the way that they've handled this Bernie Sanders story is how this revelation that Brett Baier, of all people, on Fox News did a better job commenting on Bernie Sanders and his popularity. Take a look.
Fundraising numbers for Q4 are in, Brett, and they are impressive. Bernie Sanders, $34.5 million for the quarter. Pete Buttigieg, $24.7 million. To Elizabeth Warren, 17. Andrew Yang, 16.5. Joe Biden, 15 million. I'm sure you've got some analysis on that, but you have to put that up against the Trump campaign raking in 46 million as well.
You have to give Bernie Sanders credit. Remember, he's raising money with a big field that at one time was 20 candidates. He has $34.5 million for this quarter. And the key part is that they're all small donors. It's about $18 is the average donation to Bernie Sanders. And all of those people have a lot more that they could do.
So
that's amazing.
It's amazing when Fox News is more accurate, forget fair, is more accurate than the mainstream media is. What does that tell you about the mainstream media? And look, Fox News does propaganda for the right wing, but the corporate media does propaganda for corporations and for corporate Democrats and Republicans. So that's just the reality of it. Pick your poison. But to be fair to Brett Baier, he was right there. And he went on to say later in the segment, by the way, the Democratic Party is going to be panicking over this. And he's also right about that.
Yes, he is.
Oh my God, the Democratic Party might be represented by someone the Democratic voters agree with. Panic! Panic, he's not taking corporate money. What are we gonna do? Now, isn't that something you should celebrate? Like, oh my God, somebody that agrees with our principles and that isn't beholden to any kind of corruption. Well, you wouldn't celebrate that if the establishment and the leadership of the Democratic Party is actually part of the corruption.
Yes.
So, but again, the media, if you say that, you're banned. You're banned. You cannot criticize Biden, Pelosi, Schumer, et cetera. Now, but I want to get to an even more comical take. This is Bill Scher at Politico. So he sees the record numbers, unreal, wonderful, positive. No, not positive. Bill says, your periodic reminder that the small donor class is disproportionately white, wealthy, college educated, and much smaller than the overall primary electorate.
What?
So first of all, there's no data to back that up. The 1.2 million people that gave money to Bernie Sanders are disproportionately white. First of all, the country's disproportionately white, okay? So let's just make things up while we're at it. And then second of all, I wonder if the people in the wine cave were disproportionately white. We've seen the pictures, they're all white, okay? And corporate donors, they're lobbyists. Has there been any articles in Politico about, oh my God, the lobbyists are disproportionately white males that are very wealthy and all college educated? Not one article about that. I would be shocked if every lobbyist wasn't wealthy, college educated, and almost all white, right? But oh, no. Corporate donors, big donors, wonderful. Small donors, white, well, What? Small donors are wealthy? That's the whole point, is that they're not wealthy.
Exactly.
They gave $18 on average. Take the truth and turn it on its head. You know what that's called? It's called propaganda, and it's called manufacturing consent. Noam Chomsky wrote about it decades ago, and this is manufacturing consent in action.
So I want to also give you one other comparison. It's not even a comparison. I want to show you how the New York Times has chosen to cover Bernie Sanders and how he's outraised every other Democratic candidate in the fourth quarter. So these are two headlines from the New York Times. The first one reads, this is amazing. Pete Buttigieg's campaign says it raised $24.7 million in the fourth quarter. So what? Okay, but all right, that's fine. Maybe they just want to cover Buttigieg. They're hyper focused on him. But then here's the one that really takes the cake. Biden rebounds, Warren slows, Sanders rolls, the latest on the 2020 money race.
So look, if you had the Buttigieg article by itself, it's fine, okay? But is that the big headline? Well, but when the Bernie numbers come out, shouldn't it be Bernie Sanders breaks a record? Okay, well, you don't want to give him credit because you hate him, whatever. But Bernie Sanders is #1 in money, in fundraising. No, he's mentioned third. He's mentioned, but wait, is he third in the polling? Is he eighth in the polling? No, he's #1 in New Hampshire, #2 in Iowa, and closing, #2 nationally. But Biden this, Warren that, Sanders rolls. Yeah, fine. I mean, and all of you are lumped together in one article, but Buttigieg, who raised $10 million less than Bernie Sanders, and largely did it in wine caves. But you know what? You know who lives in a wine cave? The New York Times. They would love to be in a wine cave. They're the wine cave media. So of course they celebrate Buttigieg. Maybe they pop some champagne when Buttigieg's numbers came in. But when the Sanders money comes in, they're like, oh, well, I guess he's rolling, it's fine. I mean, just mention a third.
I mean, they celebrate the annual wine cave and it's called the White House Correspondents' Dinner, right? I mean, look, this isn't an accident. It's not an accident. Don't mistake this as, oh, maybe there's an oversight issue. No, it's intentional. It's intentional. There is, if Buttigieg, if any other candidate had outraised all the other Democrats in the field the way that Bernie Sanders had, I guarantee you that person would not be buried. That lead would not be buried. That would be front and center, right?
Well, we know it because Buttigieg didn't outraise anyone,
God.
and he was front and center. Bernie raises 10 million more than him, breaks a record, and he's mentioned third. Can you imagine, like, if the New York Times was like, and Buttigieg rolls? They would never do that. It's the beloved Buttigieg. So, and look, super last thing, because I did a whole long video about it. You check it out on youtube.com/TYT and also on TYT.com. Earlier today, I got so mad at another Politico article because they did a critique of Buttigieg. I was like, oh great, let me see, finally I found one, right? Nope, same exact thing as they did every other time. The radical left says this unfair thing about Pete Buttigieg. And what was his thesis? Why? Because they're jealous of him. Oh, okay. But Buttigieg, luckily, heroically fending off these unfair attacks. Can
you imagine if there were a story out of Burlington, right? Indicating that Bernie Sanders fired the first African American police chief because his donors told him to.
They would say disqualifying. It's over.
It's over.
It's over. But by the way, if you're saying, wait, Pete Buttigieg fired, or in that case, he asked him to resign and then demoted the first police chief who was black in South Bend? Yeah, and a lot worse than that. And there's cops on tape saying white people are going to be back in charge. We got Buttigieg's donors to get rid of the black police chief. If that was a story about Bernie, there is no one in the world who could argue that everyone in the national media wouldn't cover it to death until they tarred and feathered him and drove him out of the race. For Buttigieg, if you haven't heard it, I don't blame you because it's a fact. It's on TYT.com. Our managing editor broke the story. It is indisputable. The South Bend Common Council profusely thanked them for the investigative work. But the New York Times and all the mainstream media is like, I don't see it. I don't see it. I don't think it's an issue at all. I mean, getting rid of black people from government, that's kind of awesome, isn't it? I mean, bravo, Pete Buttigieg. I mean, they don't belong anywhere, right? Let alone in a wine cave.
Well,
so
look,
they're the most biased people in America. So be super careful what you read in the media.
Especially the New York Times. And look, who knows? To be fair to them, maybe they just don't trust us as a source because we're just a radio show. We're not, obviously.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, guys, as always, we try to be over the top fair. I know they're like, oh yeah, you guys are actually honest about your opinion, so you can't be fair. Idiots. Okay, anyway, so just double check our facts.
Yeah.
But don't take our word for it. We're not asking you to take our word for it. We broke the story. Why don't you prove us wrong? Why don't you go out there and defend your buddy Buttigieg? New York Times said, will you, goddamn it, will you send someone to South Bend, Associated Press, etc.? Where are you guys? Are the Young Turks wrong or are we right? So why don't you just go, I know, do what you do, defend Buttigieg. You can't, because you know we're right. And then that's amazing that you're ignoring that story. Amazing. But they don't care, they're purposely biased.